To be moral in this world, you don't have to feed the hungry or sit with the widow. You just have to be liberal or conservative. You just have to feel properly enraged at the people you find contemptible. Now, behind the truth of that statement, I see men and women that are preyed upon and manipulated in their loneliness and brokenness, whipped into an angry mob by politicians.
But even from the get-go, there's this kind of sense when he talks a couple times about politicians. You get the sense, and it's often generalized. You lump in all these politicians as people who are merely trying to manipulate us, whip us into a frenzy, control us. And there's this very low view of politicians across the board. I don't think there's any nuance in his answers or any careful distinctions. And so it's kind of throwing all politicians under the bus. And I think with it kind of dragging all politics into it, kind of presenting maybe a lower view of it or demonizing a little bit of it. Because if you characterize this enterprise of politics and you characterize the politicians as this, they're just trying to manipulate us and control us, then that can, for many people, give more force to your critique.
Yeah.
And we want to say, wait a second, let's have a more careful, balanced, nuanced view, because that's going to be more true to reality. Because we personally know people who are in politics, people who have been politicians, who are very good men and women, men and women of integrity who truly want to serve the common good, who want to serve their constituents, who aren't there simply for the power, who have sacrificed a great deal, especially at the local level, where they're not getting some huge salary, but they're working hard to serve the people of their city.
Yeah.
And so we want to say, we need to be careful about how we talk about politicians.
It's the same way that pastors and teachers in the church want to be careful how you talk about business as an enterprise as well.
Exactly.
And going to this, well, if you're in business, you're just about greed and making money. And I'm not saying Matt Chandler did that, but this is I think a related thing where you condemn the whole enterprise. And what we don't want to do in the church, and we don't want to do in our homes with our kids, is condemn the whole political enterprise, especially in a country like America that is a republic. It's a democratic republic. We want some of our kids and some of the people in our church to be a part of political leadership. Why? Because hopefully their worldview will inform how they govern and lead people. And so there are people in that audience that maybe would run for school board or for city council or for mayor or for a central committee position or whatever. And you want to encourage that. And you don't want to discourage that. And I think something like this is a discouraging, just like I've heard teaching on business sometimes. And there's this discouragement. Or, I mean, you could take it to any area, teaching in the arts, like, oh, art's like this side thing, but not really like a necessary thing of the church. And so we diminish this whole enterprise of creating beauty in the arts when we diminish it like that. And so we don't want to do that, even with politics, even in a realm that a lot of us would, everyone would agree. Oh, there have been really bad people involved in politics. We all know that. And he gives biblical examples of fallen leaders from Abraham to Moses. And so this fallenness about people, which I think is why the American system, as it was intended, is good, because it's based on checks and balances. So even people in power are supposed to always have a check over them. And so that to me is, of course, affirming the Christian worldview that, like Matt said, that every human being has fallenness in them. But we don't want to condemn the whole enterprise. We don't want to do it with our kids. Yeah. And we don't want to do it in our churches.
If we do, then we strip people of the motivation to go into those areas.
Absolutely.
And what we really want to be doing, I think, is raising up men and women to go into all kinds of vocations to be ambassadors for Christ, to fulfill the cultural mandate and also the Great Commission, right? Those two commissions. And so that's why it's so important not to simply demonize a whole class of people like politicians. Now, we would also admit at the same time, there's a lot of distrust in politicians today. There's a growing distrust. And that's actually across the board in all institutions. We could say the same thing about the pastorate. There's a growing distrust in the pastors. Yeah. And we have all kinds of examples of pastors who have done bad things. But we wouldn't want to throw out the entirety of the pastorate and say that they're all therefore trying to manipulate us and get our money and things like that because you have bad examples. So that this is, again, we want to think carefully through all of these things.